Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs. Today is Thursday, January 18th, 2026. And today on the Daily Beaver Morning Show, we are going to talk about a battle that has emerged between Alberta Treaty Chiefs and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. And whoops, hold on, there's a little extra noise there that shouldn't have happened. Um, and which the Chiefs put their foot down, and Danielle Smith does not seem to be able to cope. As well, the Prime Minister has made some statements about the Iran deal that seem a little curious, but is it really a full throated endorsement or some strategic positioning given CUSMA talks? We'll also, if we have time, have some clips as promised with various ministers and politicians who have been presenting new bills or have been passing some through the House of Commons as the sitting is about to end. And of course, today at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, it's World Cup Day. Canada against Qatar. Is today the day that Canada will get its first three-pointer? Grab your favorite bevy, kits and cubs, because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 933 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian right there. And always, of course, Beaverific. Today, recording day is Thursday, June 18th, 2026, and it is an extremely rainy day here at the Beaver Lodge, at least to start, although it's supposed to clear up later. I am your host, the eager beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly, but you will get your dose of Grizzly this weekend when we have our pubcast live from the Lieutenant's Pump around I'd say probably around between 1 and 2 o'clock on a Saturday, because before it, for those of you who will be in the National Capital area, please join us at the Museum of Nature around noon so that we can go on our mental health walk, kits and cubs. Yes, as you know, every year, although last year I was not able to walk because I'd broken my foot. But this is our third year where we, on Father's Day, invite men and male identifying persons to either call one of their mates, their blokes, their bros, to go for a walk, either to talk about their own mental health or to check in with them about their own. So, if you can make some time to do so over the course of the weekend, we would love for you to participate with us in that initiative. Very important. And if you can't do it on the 20th, that's okay. Just pick some time on the weekend or even this week to do it. But make some time to check in with a friend or to ask to check in with a friend if you need it. It's very, very important. And we need to destigmatize people talking about their mental health, particularly men who seem not to talk about it a lot and often claim that they have nobody to talk to when things get a little overwhelming. So please do that. It's not necessarily a fundraiser. It's more to raise awareness and to destigmatize, to normalize speaking about mental health, getting men to do that. But if you do have a couple of dollars, if you want to donate to a local charity that you support that supports mental health, please do. Or you can support one of our initiatives. As you know, since April 12th, I've been trying to get back in shape, losing weight because I tipped the scale at around 182 pounds or 78 kilograms, around there, I think it was. Or maybe it was more than that, actually, come to think about that. Because I know that somebody asked, doesn't anybody weigh in kilograms anymore? And I did the conversion a few days ago, but I may not remember what the precise number was. Um, but I have been trying to lose weight and successfully removed at least 12 pounds, on a good day 14. So I'm asking for a pledge of a dollar or two more if you're willing for every pound that I will lose. I still have until the 20th. I got 2 more days to lose a few more. If I can, but I think I've pretty much plateaued for the moment. So if you would like to make a contribution, that would be very welcome. Just send your pledge to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. And when everything is done, we will be making a couple of donations to our beneficiary organizations, the Men of the North program in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, which is Indigenous led, and the Lonely Man Project in St. John's, Newfoundland, that is looking to build itself a resource center for people who need some help. There you have it, kids and cubs. We really hope that you will be able to participate in some way. Also, I'm going to put it up early, trying to develop some new habits. But if you watch the show and you do like what we do, you find it has value, it resonates with you, and you would like to encourage us to do more, this is how you can contribute to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, which helps us finance this show. So thank you very much for all of your support. Also happy to announce that we are back on podcast. We have uploaded two of them, and very happy to do so, and to see if we can reconnect with our audio cast audience, because we haven't been in touch with them since sometime last September. So hopefully that will go well. I'm not as good an editor and audio producer as Mr. Grizzly was, so the shows will be a little bit different than they were, but hopefully still of good enough quality for people to be able to listen to and enjoy them without it being too distracting. Let's just put it that way, that we're not up to Mr. Grizzly's very exacting standards. All right, kids and cubs, a big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. How is your mental health today? I am doing very well. Thank you very much. Did not get as much sleep as I would have wanted to, but the sleep that I did get was solid. I was up late last night, later than I had wanted to be. So it was a shorter night, but I did get solid sleep. I slept all the way through that which I did sleep. So I'm very grateful for that. Couple of programming notes, kids and cubs. This afternoon around 2:30, it came around very quickly. We will be having our interview with MPP, Liberal MPP for Ontario, Tyler Watt, if everything goes according to plan, who represents the riding of Nepean, who just confirmed with his team that he would be available at 2:30 this afternoon. And rather than pre-recording it and showing it at a different time, because our Restream platform only allows us to record 1 hour, we're just going to go live at 2:30. Over the past few months, with all the upheaval around here, I kind of gotten people used to us doing shows not necessarily only in the morning. So hopefully we will have an audience for that. And I'm also happy to announce that next Tuesday morning, one of our very own member of the DamFam, Kit Toronto Dan, is going to be with us for an interview talking about his bid to secure the seat in Ward 8 in Toronto in the upcoming municipal elections. So, already, two of our interviews that I promised we were going to be getting back to interviews as the session of all the sessions of the legislature start to rise for the summer. And well, there we go. Even before Ottawa rises, which is tomorrow, of course. We are getting on with that. Also, I see in the chat that we have some very special news, and that it is Kit Linda, the original and the best. It's a birthday. So happy birthday to you, dear one. I hope that it is fantastic that you are surrounded with love and laughter, hoping that Mr. Linda is very, very, very good to you because you are a very special person and you deserve a birthday that is as fabulous as you are. So, hey, and remember, Beaver Lodge rules, all the cake is guilt and calorie free today. So just like slam your face down in there. Eat the whole cake. Eat the whole cake. I see Donna Carol here saying, lost 42 pounds since last summer. I took it slow, diet changes and more exercise. Stupid menopause, but now that's over. Woohoo! Indeed. Woohoo. Not that I could relate. Although I'm told that there's andropause with men, so we'll see what that happens. I think mine is maybe already started because maybe that's the reason why I ballooned up to 182. It seems that nowadays I just look at food and I gain weight. So maybe that's what's going on with me. But hey, congratulations, 42 pounds. That is quite an achievement. That requires some dedication and some stick to itness. So way to go. Proud of you. That's well done. Um, let's see. Is there anything else? Let's say hello to the kits of the DamFam that are here today. Wow, you have been chatting. So we have Kit Elaine. Good morning, dear one. Kit Uncovers here, telling us that the Bank of England has held its interest rate at 3.75%. And of course, the Bank of Canada held their interest rate at 2.25%. So there you go. I think the European, was it the European Bank? I think they raised theirs recently. And I think in the United States, they also, I'm not sure if they announced yet, actually. I need to double check on that. For some reason, I recall reading something saying that they held steady, but I'm actually not sure now that I'm thinking about it, whether or not that was actually announced and whether I'm just misremembering something. Um, as well, we have the Kit the Breens are here. Hello, good morning to you. We have Kit Bucky. We have Kit Uniquely Jillian, who has a birthday coming next week. So I'm going to have to break out my Marilyn Monroe routine again next week to sing happy birthday to you. We have Kit Argosi Acres here from the Cochin Valley saying good morning. We have, let's see, who else is in the chat this morning? Kit Grace Speech Life is with us. Good morning to you. And we keep going down the list because I believe I saw a name that was newer to me here. Kit Canuck Cat 13. Maybe not a new name, actually. I do remember seeing that before. Good morning. Glad that you're here today. And is that everyone? Kit Nona Carol, of course, with us. And Kit Toronto Dan is with us today. Hello. Very excited to be talking to you on Tuesday. I can't wait to hear what you're up to and to find out more. There's the new name here. Oh, we have Kit Curtis Bragg, who apparently does not seem to be here in the same spirit as everyone else. But hey, welcome to you as well. We have Kit Cat W4U4D with us. Good morning to you. And is that everyone this morning? Just going through the list because I'm seeing a lot of repeats of names. And oh no, Kit Frankie is here. Good morning to you, good sir. So glad you are with us. And that is indeed everyone. But another special birthday wish here sent to us by Kit Toronto Dan saying, Happy birthday tomorrow. Well, the whole bunch of stuff just scrolled up very quickly uh, to his Nan, I believe. Just taking a look here. Sorry, Kit Toronto Dan. Your post. There it is. Nanny T. Grandma will be 99. Wow. Okay. There you go. And so lots of stuff to celebrate today. Let's just get right into it, Kits and Cups, because there's a lot to talk about today. And we are going to start with some news coming out of Alberta. Um, the treaty chiefs from Alberta Chiefs from Treaty number 6, number 7, and number 8 had a few things to say yesterday because, as you know, they have been doing a rather good job at standing up for Canada during this whole push for a referendum on separation, during which Danielle Smith has seemingly gone out of her way to antagonize First Nations and Indigenous people by simply not meeting her duty to consult, as Premier Wab Canoe had let her know she was supposed to do. Now, we all know that Danielle Smith is a very duplicitous and deceitful person. She's also pretty much a narcissist. If you remember last summer when we had the wildfires, when the town of Jasper issued a report stating that things might have been a little smoother if the government of Alberta had not tried to use the opportunity for the wildfires to try to encroach on federal jurisdiction, which is ironic because Danielle Smith tells everybody to stay in their own lane. And that report came out and she got her nose in such a snit and started demanding apologies because there's absolutely no way in Danielle Smith's reality that she could ever do anything that is wrong. She is always right. And she does not tolerate being told no. And she does not tolerate being told that she could have done better on something. And we saw more of that from her yesterday. This is someone who cannot take the slightest bit of criticism or constructive critique without balking. So, yesterday, the Assembly of Treaty Chiefs issued a press release which really ratchets up the rhetoric, but deservedly so, because if you also remember, at the meeting of the Western Premiers, Danielle Smith had the unmitigated gall at that press conference to sit at that table and try to white-splain duty consult to Canadians, gaslighting them in the process. But she had the unmitigated gall to do so in the presence of a peer, a fellow premier, who happens to be Indigenous, who is intimately familiar with what duty to consult is just through lived experience, but also as a legislator and a premier. And we found out during that press conference that even though they had had a discussion before in which the premier had let her know that she was not correct in her assessment of duty to consult, she still sat at that table and tried to pretend that there was some type of confusion or lack of clarity when the jurisprudence on this issue is as long as her arm. There is no confusion. There is confusion of convenience. There is no lack of clarity. There is just pretense that there's some type of lack of clarity because she just does not want to do the work. Now, treaty chiefs have said in the past that were it the case that this would proceed Maybe not on this referendum question per se, but the next one, say, um, the referendum goes the wrong way for Canada. Seemingly little chance of that at the moment, given public opinion results that we have been talking about, but also the behavior of Alberta separatist leaders, as we have seen in the town of Sundre, where they are threatening their fellow citizens if they can't get their own way on everything 100% of the time. There might not be that much to worry about because it seems they're doing a great job on their own, uh, making the case against themselves. However, Danielle Smith also threatened Indigenous people with criminal charges and being arrested should they stand up for their rights. So that was an escalation on her part. Every single escalation in this dynamic has come from her, seeking to help the separatists, bending over backwards to change the law, bending over backwards to somehow accept their petition, even though the signatures are not verified, challenging legal decisions that say that she has a duty towards Indigenous people, threatening them with arrest if they insist on advocating for their rights and taking measures into their own hands because the government just won't listen. So, the natural logical response that we can expect from these repeated escalations came out yesterday, and I will read it for you. The Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, AOTC, of Treaty Number 6, Number 7, and Number 8 has unanimously passed a resolution calling for an investigation by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and Auditor General into the actions of Premier Danielle Smith and members of the UCP to determine whether they constitute treason under Section 46 of the Criminal Code of Canada. The vote took place in a duly convened meeting on Treaty 7 territory in Calgary on June 16, 2026. We call for this investigation on the basis of the international violation of the treaties, of calling a referendum in the face of severe risks to Canada's sovereignty and the treaty relationship, and of failing to take action on the violation of privacy rights of millions of people. Further, Premier Smith and the UCP government have done all this with significant risks of foreign interference and influence. At the time of treaty, the Northwest Mounted Police, now the RCMP, committed to ensuring the safety of First Nations and our territories, and that the Crown guarantees the peace and goodwill mutually promised between First Nations and the Crown in exchange for sharing these lands. United, the chiefs of Treaty 6, Treaty Number 7, and Treaty Number 8 territories now call on the fulfillment of this commitment in the form of a full investigation. And there are some media contacts supplied at the bottom of this press conference for the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations, Treaty 7 Nations Chiefs Association, the Blackfoot Confederacy, and the Treaty 8 First Nations of Alberta, asking for an investigation by the RCMP to be opened and calling for the Auditor General to also investigate the actions of the Premier and members of the UCP. That is a pretty strong demand here. As you could suspect, that did not go over very well with Empress Danny. But we'll get to her later because she gets enough screen time. According to Leanne Sanders of the Aboriginal People's Television Network, as the Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, AOTC in Alberta, called for an RCMP investigation into Danielle Smith and the UCP government, the Premier came out swinging, telling the chiefs they need to, quote, check themselves. Yes, they're the ones who need to be checking their behavior in all of this. The AOTC accused Smith Wednesday of potential treasonous activity for calling a separation vote. Chiefs from across Alberta unanimously voted at a Calgary meeting to ask the RCMP to look into whether the referendum amounts to criminal treason by Smith and her United Conservative Party. She said the accusation is disgraceful. Is it? Is it though? Is it though? Uh, you did go to Mar-a-Lago alone. Who knows what you discussed while you were there? The members of the leaders of the Alberta separatist movement claim that they have had meetings with top-level officials and that they even have a line of credit perhaps secured. We've had statements from Scott Bessent, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, seeming to indicate that he would be okay with that. You have Ambassador Pete Hoekstra, who ran the Republican campaign in Michigan in the last election, who is intimately familiar with an application that happened to be used when the electors list suddenly became insecure in the hands of the Centurion Project, leaving up to 3 million Albertans at high risk for not only identity theft, but perhaps harassment, intimidation, and violence, even potentially death, with the government of Alberta seemingly non moved by any sense of urgency. They're just going to wait till the investigations play out before they do anything. We have David Parker, who seemingly still is flouting a judicial order to cease and desist. Don't know if he's still in Texas, but he did appear to flee the province. He might call it something else. And again, the Minister of Justice not seeming to be in any hurry to ensure that the law is enforced here. And while they have all the time in the world to wait for those investigations to pan out, they didn't have time, however, to wait for full validation of the allegedly 300,000 signatures from people who would like separation. Not a single one of them has been deemed valid. And she has twisted and contorted the signatures of 400,000 other Albertans from the Forever Canadian petition as being signatures that were in favor, demanding a referendum when they were not. They were seeking to avoid one, and claiming that Thomas Lukasik asked for a constitutional referendum, which does not exist as one of the two options on the form, but one of the options on the form, which is a policy and legislative change, that's what they asked for. And then she had sent that request to a committee to die a slow, painful death until such time as the separatist petition was, well, the signatures could not be verified and was deemed unconstitutional because she didn't meet her duty to consult. And then all of a sudden, she found a reason to take the Forever Canadian petition. And then she concocted a hybrid question that took a little bit of the separatist question, took a little bit of the Forever Canadian question, and sort of mushed them together in some incomprehensible mess, making neither side happy and creating a situation where she is plummeting in personal approvals, in which the overwhelming majority of Albertans, whether they are on the separatism side or on the federalism side, each one of them believes that Danielle Smith is fighting for the other side. She has lost the confidence of the people. She has botched this entirely wholly and irrefutably. And then to add more insult to injury, we have the Water Not Coal petition from Corb Lund, who Danielle Smith says he also demanded a policy and legislative option, which she is sending that to committee to die after promising that if that petition required met the required number of signatures, that she would put it on the ballot. But now she doesn't want to do that anymore because that will draw out people to vote who wouldn't support her other 9 initiatives. So now that's going to committee to die. But getting different treatment than the Forever Canadian petition and getting different treatment than the Separatist Leaders petition. 3 different petitions, 3 different treatments, absolutely no consistency. Just the only thing consistent is the moving of the goalposts. But she said the accusation is disgraceful, not her behavior, not her unwillingness to follow the law, not her unwillingness to meet duty to consult, not her overzealousness in personally validating signatures that cannot be validated, signatures that we don't even know are authentic. None of that is disgraceful. The putting of the booze back on the shelves, helping the Americans, that was not disgraceful. Going to Mar-a-Lago down alone to try to negotiate a special carve-out or exclusion for herself and create this place in Canada where the United States could insert the thin edge of the wedge to try to divide us. No, none of that was disgraceful. All of those disloyal to Canada behaviors, that's not what was disgraceful. Signing the MOU and immediately after signing it, changing the way that the rules around methane were supposed to operate to meet the methane reductions and changing the rules around what could be used to compensate for reductions in GHGs, thus making it impossible to meet the terms of the MOU. All those behaviors are not disgraceful. It's being called out on them, apparently, that is disgraceful. The article goes on. She said her government and the assembly have collaborative relationship and she wants it to continue, but that the chief's language has no place in democracy. As if she hasn't had some language of her own that has no place in democracy. Consistently. The chief said the fall referendum in Alberta is an intentional violation of the treaty relationship and ignores risks to Canada's sovereignty. They fired back at Smith for her comments. Quote, "You know, there's a lot of questions to be asked here. They're talking about breaking up Canada and breaking up treaties and doing all of these things which have great impacts to all of Canada. So, you know, we use serious wording because it's a serious concern," Treaty 8 Grand Chief Trevor McCready said in an interview with APTN News. Quote, "I would say that we are checking ourselves as treaty nations and we're making sure that she's being checked as well. And she's having to face some uncomfortable truth that she's trying to get around by appealing and bringing legislation forward to appease the separatists that directly contravenes our treaties, not to mention engaging in some really high stakes emotional manipulation here. I can't believe they would say this about me. This is language that is just simply unacceptable in a democracy. Have you heard what she says about Canada? How dare they? It's disgraceful. Poor me. I'm the victim here. Those mean, bad chiefs. Mm-hmm. McCready and the rest of the AOTC have been vocal opponents of a referendum on separation. They celebrated when an Alberta court judge quashed one of the separatist petitions, but Smith was quick to appeal that decision, saying the judge misinterpreted the duty to consult. The judge did not misinterpret. You were just told no, and you don't like that, so you had a little hissy fit. And since you don't have to spend your own money, uh, you're happy to blow Albertans' taxpayer dollars on legal goose chase, wild legal goose chase that you can use as marketing and self promotion for yourself. Look how I'm fighting for Alberta. Mhm. McGrady told APTN they want the RCMP and the Auditor General to look at the processes on separation and how separatists are, quote, moving it forward, where the funding is coming from. When it comes to whether the actions of Smith and the UCP amount to treason, experts said in a Canadian press report, it depends. Quote, treason and sedition and other similar offenses, or even subversion, they're really, really tied to the idea of betraying Canada during a time of war, said Stephanie Carvin, an associate international relations professor at Carleton University and former national security analysts. Well, I guess that depends on whether or not you consider what the United States is doing to us to be war. We have the trade war where they said that they were not going to invade us militarily, but try to um, break us using economic coercion. And there's repeated talks about annexing us. Some would say that those would constitute declarations of war. I guess it depends what your definition of war is in this case. And the treaty chiefs are not the only one that are looking for investigations. Charlie Angus recently had a press conference in the West Block Theatre where he was asking for I believe it is the Commissioner on Foreign Interference to look into what was going on. We also have our Commons petitions E7124. We're going to do a little democracy, something that you do early here, that calls upon the House of Commons to formally review the conduct of U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. And should the review find that the ambassador's actions are inconsistent with diplomatic protocol or detrimental to Canada's interests, the government of Canada take appropriate diplomatic measures, including the possible request for his recall. I'm going to put the link to that up right now in the chat because you have until the 25th of this month to sign that and circulate that and get as many signatures as you can. And we're at 26,718 signatures on that already. But we also have our Commons petition number E7340, which calls upon the House of Commons in Parliament assembled to invoke its authority under Section 53 of the Supreme Court Act to refer the constitutionality of the 2025 Alberta Justice Statutes Amendment Act to the Supreme Court of Canada and to direct the Foreign Influence Transparency Commissioner to immediately investigate the meetings between the Alberta Prosperity Project and the Trump administration. I'm going to put the link to that one. That one, we only have until June 20th to get that signed. And the number of signatures on this petition has reached 39,802. So it's not just the chiefs that are seeing behavior that is either treasonous, seditionist, or subversive and are asking for it to be investigated. Danielle Smith will want to focus all the attention on Indigenous people because they're different. But make no mistake, this is not only coming from them. As for being subject to other laws like those related to foreign interference, it depends on the conversations being covert. Quote, the activities that we're talking about, if they're being discussed in the newspaper, they're not covert, they're right there, she said. In Canadian law, treason means using force in an attempt to overthrow the federal or provincial government or providing military or scientific intelligence to foreign officials that threatens Canada's defense or safety. Some leaders in the separatist movement have been talking about, or at least musing confidently about, the United States coming to their defense, should that be needed. Michael Nesbitt, an associate law professor at the University of Calgary, said Canada's criminal code is both specific and fuzzy on the topic. For example, he said the code is vague as to what type of information one would provide to a foreign entity for it to mount to criminal charges. The report came after BC Premier David Eby criticized separatist leaders for meeting with U.S. officials in January. Quote, they are trying to work with another foreign power and unfriendly power to bring about the dismemberment of Canada, and so by any dictionary definition of the term, that is certainly treasonous, Eby said. The AOTC wants those actions investigated further. Quote, when we have a government that's undermining our rights and trying to push our treaty rights as if it's a fable and doesn't exist, we have to assert ourselves. We have to make sure that her and her party and anybody else understand that Alberta is founded on treaties. We were not conquered, McCready said. She talks about having relationships with the nations and the chiefs and whatnot, but really that relationship is not there. If we have to put them on notice for their failure to do their job properly when it comes to working with Treaty First Nations, we'll make sure that they know. Albertans are to vote on October 19th on whether they want to remain in Canada or start the process to hold a second binding referendum on the province separating from Canada. So we see what else do we have here. Oh, also from the APTN, Leanne Sanders this time. Dozens of chiefs from Treaty Number 6, Number 7, and 8 have voted unanimously on a resolution calling for an RCMP investigation into whether the actions of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and members of the UCP government amount to treason. They want to determine whether treason has been committed under Section 46 of the Criminal Code. Quote, we call for this investigation on the basis of the intentional violation of the treaties or of calling a referendum in the face of severe risks to Canada's sovereignty and the treaty relationship, and of failing to take action on the violation of privacy rights of millions of people, the Assembly of Treaty Chiefs says in a news release after meeting Tuesday in Calgary. Quote, further, Premier Smith and the UCP government have done all this with significant risks of foreign interference and influence, the chiefs added. The chief said the RCMP has had the role of protecting treaty rights and are asking them to step up now. In an interview with ABTN News, Chief Sheldon Sunshine of Sturgeon Creek Cree Nation said, quote, we've all seen this UPC government bend over backwards over the last couple of years for this separatist movement. Actually, that should be UCP government. That might be a typo here. Making accommodations for a small group trying to utilize 400,000 Albertans who voted in favor of staying in Canada, trying to weaponize those people, and just to serve a small minority. Smith maintained she and her party support, quote, a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, whatever that means. But she's been met with criticism for allowing legislation that made it easier for separatists and others to mount successful petitions on questions to be added to an October 19 referendum. Questions that will draw out the people that she hopes will vote for her other 9 questions that she intends to use as a baseball bat to internally bash Canada over the head, given that most of her issues with the alleged 9 bad laws have been resolved. She doesn't exist unless she's in opposition to Ottawa. So she needs more things to fight against Ottawa on, and a lot of those 9 questions involve things that are not in her lane in any way, shape, or form. Most recently, Smith proposed a question be put to a vote on whether Albertans want to stay in Canada or whether Alberta should start the process to hold a second binding referendum on separation. And of course, duplicitous Danny, deceitful as she is, included wording when she changed the question the separatist forces put ahead to include things that actually do not exist. There is no such thing as a binding referendum under the Westminster parliamentary system. There's also no such thing as a constitutional process. For what it is, the referendum would call for. And even though there is no such thing as a binding referendum on this particular referendum, the one that we're going to have on October 19th, she did already come out and say that she would be bound by the results. Thus, creating a situation of obligation artificially that does not actually exist under the law. Smith made the announcement last month after a judge struck down the group Stray Free Alberta's petition on separation, saying there was a failure to consult First Nations. Smith called the judge's ruling a misinterpretation of the duty to consult and is appealing the decision. She also called it undemocratic, which is absolutely ridiculous. Because in a democratic society, when we have a difference, we go to the courts to resolve them, and the courts are bound by the Constitution, which ensures that they must make decisions that are indeed inherently democratic. But there's no institution that Danielle Smith is not willing to torch and burn down. If it opposes her, says no to her, or tells her that she's the one who is lacking. It's not the first time the AOTC has been critical of Smith and the UCP. In February, it passed a vote of non-confidence in the Premier and the government for their, quote, refusal to respond appropriately to the current political atmosphere on our treaty territories. At the time, the chief said the UCP, quote, acted repeatedly with a lack of critical understanding and respect for those responsibilities, demonstrating their inability to responsibly and respectfully govern the province of Alberta. The chiefs also said the referendum and, quote, separatist agenda was leading to unsafe conditions for First Nations people by promoting ignorance and intolerance and outright racism, or people going to every public forum that they can to accuse the chiefs of being crooks. For example, won't say how we came to know about that. So yeah, the chiefs are making their voices heard. So let's go take a look at how Danielle Smith decided to handle this situation. Because I tell you, once again, the internet is forever. And I have a feeling that one day she's not going to be happy that this is still circulating, because Danielle Smith's first loyalty is to herself. And when she is finally out of this job, and one day she will be out of this job, she's going to just try to move on to her next grift. This is going to follow her forever and ever and ever. I feel like the twins in The Shining. Come play with us forever and ever and ever and ever. All right. Let's give it a little look-see here, kids and cubs. Danielle Smith completely dishonoring herself.
Treaty chiefs are calling for an investigation into whether your actions over the independence referendum amount to treason under the criminal code. What's your response to that?
Well, I think it's disgraceful. I think it's disgraceful that any government that wants to be taken seriously would level charges that serious against another government. Look, I've had my differences with the federal government, but I have never used language like that. I would ask the treaty chiefs to check themselves because we have a very collaborative relationship between our government and our ministers. I want that to continue. But this kind of overwrought language has no place in a democracy.
Okay. She has never used language like that. She's only accused the federal government of trying to pretty much strangle Alberta to death and to try to kill its industry. Right? She's only spent her entire career as premier depicting Ottawa, Canada, liberals, lefties, Trudeau, Guilbeault as some type of ominous force that is preventing Alberta from just being itself. David Eby. Anyone who tells her no. They're all anti-Alberta. They all want Alberta to fail. But no, she's never used such language. She's never used such overwrought language that has no place in democracy. No, never. Girl, you know we see you, right? You know we can see you and hear you, right? And we've been able to see you and hear you all along, right? She's just pure as the driven snow.
When they were pursuing a new relationship with Ottawa, I cheered them along. We are pursuing a new relationship with Ottawa that respects our jurisdiction, And I would ask that they be respectful of that. But they need to, that language has no place in this democratic discussion.
Okay. Holding a referendum on whether or not you want to separate is one hell of a new relationship with Ottawa that you're pursuing. Just saying. That pipeline is never getting built. Not under these conditions. Not with her behaving like this. She's killing that pipeline because she knows she can't get it done. She doesn't have a proponent. She will never have a proponent. But Mark Carney, very intelligently, in that first meeting, put the ball in her court. And she accepted that ball. I guess she thought that eventually she would be able to talk fast and talk her way through out of it. But there's going to come a time where the amount of scandal, the driving away of investment, protest, particularly Indigenous protest, is all going to come at her so fast that she will not be able to talk fast enough to untangle herself from the web of lies and deception that she has weaved. That day's coming. Let's continue on with this absolutely tone-deaf and ill-advised response.
Okay, and what steps are you taking to rebuild trust with the treaty chiefs?
We meet with them regularly, and in fact, I meet with them one-on-one. My ministers meet with them one-on-one. We have protocol tables where I bring a number of my ministers together. And you know what I've asked them? I say, well, how many times have you met with the Prime Minister when he's brought together 10 or 14 of his ministers to deal with your concerns? And you know what the answer is? Never. It doesn't happen. Ever. So that is the kind of relationship we want to continue to have with the chiefs, but it can only be done if they show as much respect for my government as we have shown for them.
So you will notice that even there, she cannot resist bashing the federal government. It is way easier for the government of Alberta to send 14 ministers to a meeting of chiefs in Alberta than the federal government to do so. But hey, if you want that type of relationship to continue, you need to show us as much respect as we are showing you. That's a threat. And you know what, Danielle? They are showing you as much respect as you have been showing them. Disregarding judicial orders, not meeting your duty to consult, going ahead with a referendum that could affect treaty rights, driving away investment, calling them disgraceful, fomenting racism, giving forces that are already known not to respect the law additional reason to target them. Challenging judicial decisions, pretending that there is a lack of clarity on duty to consult, doing that in front of an Indigenous man who is one of your peers. Yes, if you would like the chiefs of treaties number 6, number 7, and number 8 to show you the same type of respect that they are you have shown them, I would be careful what you wish for, Premier McFib, because you just might get it. In fact, I very sincerely and deeply hope and pray that you get exactly and precisely what it is that you have just asked for. May the chiefs treat you with the respect that you have shown them. I hope they do. I really deeply and sincerely hope they do. The gall. The gall. The unmitigated, unadulterated gall. Get off the cross, dearie. We have housing to build, particularly in First Nations communities. There are much better use for the wood, the hammers, and the nails. Just hop on off that cross there, boo-boo kitty. No room for you up there. We're not buying it. Unbelievable. Jeez. According to Global News by Jack Farrell, Canadian Press, as appeared in Global News, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says a group of Indigenous chiefs need to check themselves after they accused her of potential treasonous activity for calling a separatism vote. The Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, representing Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8 First Nations across Alberta, unanimously voted to ask the RCMP to look into whether the Alberta referendum amounts to criminal treason by Smith and her United Conservative Party. The chiefs say the fall referendum is an intentional violation of the treaty relationship and ignores risks to Canada's sovereignty. We call for this investigation on the basis of the intentional violation of the treaties, of calling a referendum in the face of severe risks to Canada's sovereignty and the treaty relationship, and of failing to take action on the violation of privacy rights of millions of people, said a statement from the Assembly on Wednesday. Smith says the accusation is disgraceful. Quote, "Look, I've had my differences with the federal government, but I have never used language like that," Smith said in an unrelated news conference Wednesday afternoon. She says her government and the Assembly have a collaborative relationship and she wants it to continue, but that the chief's language has no place in democracy. Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rob Anderson, a right-hand man, was quick to rush in to provide some defense. What a dangerous and irresponsible letter by treaty chiefs, asking the RCMP to investigate and charge a premier with treason because you disagree with their policy to hold a referendum in this case is a dark path that we see in third world banana republics. It is wrong, it is un-Albertan, and it is un-Canadian, period. Yeah, sure. But it seems like it was right on point, actually. Just saying. The folks at the Pearson Project say ignoring First Nations is a very, very bad move. Driving separatism is a very, very bad move. Coordinating with foreign power through it all smells very much like treason. And with some photos that are now maybe that Danielle Smith was very happy were circulating at the time, but now maybe a little inconvenient for her. Oh, there's Danielle Smith talking with Pete Hegseth. Oh, there's Danielle Smith with Marco Rubio. Oh, there's Danielle Smith with Kristi Noem. Oh, and there's Danielle Smith at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump while he's wearing a Make America Great Again cap. And she's so happy to be there, along with Kevin O'Leary, you see down here below. Yeah. Nobody else took a trip like that. Only she did. Only she did. And she didn't go there to help Canada. She certainly didn't go there to help Indigenous people. Oh, man. Poison made flesh, that woman is. Poison made flesh. Malignant narcissist. Cannot tolerate being told no. Wow. Because what happened at Coots was not un-Albertan and un-Canadian, right? Mm. Mm, 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 mm. Very important piece here by Brandy Morin, or Morin, if you're going to pronounce it French style, that appeared in Substack, her feed called Indigenous Insider. I really wish that we could get her on the show. But this was from June 11th. From ally to adversary, Danielle Smith's broken relationship with First Nations. Tansy, you showed up. That is reconciliation. But I need to be honest. 7,120 of you read these words. 381 help keep them alive. I feel that gap on every road, in every community, through every story no one else will tell. I leave my little girl and drive into the unknown. I've stood my ground in front of armed guards. I've reported through fever, through grief. I show up because no one else is coming, and because these stories are too important to disappear. Reconciliation isn't a government program or a land acknowledgement. It's this. You and me, shoulder to shoulder, making sure these voices are heard, that they're recorded, that they outlive us both. That's what a paid subscription is, not a transaction, a declaration. Do you want more of this work to help transform the narrative? Step into the fire. 12 years ago, I watched Danielle Smith's voice crack open on a local political channel, alone with the screen, unable to look away. She was reading words I had written for her, a statement honoring the Truth and Reconciliation Commission carrying the story of residential school survivor Theodore Fontaine. I had poured my kokum into those words. My grandmother survived those schools. I wrote that statement the way only someone whose blood remembers can write it. And Danielle delivered it. Her voice broke. She fought tears in front of the whole assembly. For a moment, the toughest woman in Alberta politics stood trembling over the truth of what this country did to our people. I believed her in that moment. I believed the tears were real. I still do, actually. That's the part that haunts me. Because later, when I asked her about it, she wasn't moved by what had happened in that chamber. She was angry. Angry at herself for crying, for letting the armor slip, and for looking, in her mind, weak. I've carried that hallway conversation for 12 years. I told part of this story to my paid subscribers recently, and it hasn't left me. Because right now, with this province on fire, chiefs threatened with arrests, courts ignored, and treaties treated like inconveniences, that moment keeps answering a question I can't stop asking myself. What went wrong with Danielle Smith? Nothing went wrong. She just made her choice. The armor won. And there's a clip of her here. I think perhaps reading those words that had been written. So let's see what it says here.
National Truth and Reconciliation Commission event in Edmonton saw 3,243 survivors registered, 402 statements gathered, and 30,120 live video streams broadcast to 36 countries over the course of 4 days. This paramount event helped to forge the path towards the integral process of healing and reconciliation for the victims of the residential school tragedy. Throughout the weekend, many survivors were given the opportunity to share their stories. I was particularly moved by the story of Theodore Fontaine of Winnipeg. Theodore entered residential school in 1948 and spent more than 12 years there. He would later write a book about his experiences. In his word, quote, "This was the biggest mistake that Canada ever made. Whatever you've heard is incredibly true, and it's just a fraction of what happened," unquote. Theodore said he endured mental, spiritual, and sexual abuse. Having been raped repeatedly at a young age. He went through several phases of trauma, confrontation, and healing in his life. Just 1 month ago, he began reliving the abuses A terrifying nightmare left him lying paralyzed in bed. He said, "I always think I'm on my way to reconciliation and a better way of life, but it stays with you." He went on to share about how he reached out to one of the individuals who molested him in an attempt to bring closure, and the person claimed he didn't remember him. Theodore told him, quote, "I said I'm sorry because for the last 60 years, I've hated you and wanted to kill you." Can you imagine saying that to another human being? That came from me, but it wasn't me speaking. It was the 7, 8, and 9-year-old boy getting out whatever was still bothering him after 60-some years, unquote. His abuser continued to deny that anything had happened, and Theodore resolved to confront him again at a later date. Within a month, he had another face-to-face meeting with him. And at the end, as they were wrapping up the meeting, his abuser said, "By the way, Theodore, thank you very much for not mentioning my name in your book." Mr. Speaker, there are no words. A recent study revealed that only 50% of Canadians are aware of the residential school system. One of the long-term goals of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is to ensure mainstream society is educated on this part of Canada's history, as it is a key component of the healing and reconciliation process. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission asserts, and we embrace the belief, that the truth of our common experiences will help set our spirits free and pave the way to reconciliation. It is my hope that devastating stories like Theodore's are not forgotten and will get us all one step closer to healing once and for all. Thank you.
Those were the words that Brandy Morin wrote for Danielle Smith to say. They were mentioned in the second session of the 20th Alberta Legislature that ran from March 15th, 1984 to March 13th, 1985. What happened to Danielle Smith, indeed? The piece continues. Sorry, I'm incorrect on those dates here. I put the 20th legislative session rather than the 28th legislature. I misentered the information. This was during the 2014 Truth and Reconciliation Commission's stop in Edmonton. So that was about 12 years ago. Something told me that in 1984 seemed quite a long ways ago. Oh, man. Some context for those who missed it. Before the bylines and the front lines, before the Amazon and the arrests and the awards, I was a young single mom in thrifted blazers working in the Wildrose offices, writing speeches for the leader of the opposition. When Danielle found out I was a writer and that I was Cree and Iroquois, she came to me herself and asked if I'd help her with some of her speeches. I was thrilled. Here's what people forget. Danielle didn't get handed the Indigenous file, she took it. When she built her shadow cabinet in 2012, she kept Aboriginal relations for herself. She told us she was passionate about building relationships with First Nations. She had me set up meetings. She asked me to recommend communities for her to visit. We went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's Alberta National event in Edmonton together in 2014. She insisted on going, and I watched her shake hands with chiefs and stand in a sea of survivors and elders while something sacred moved through that place. I believed we were building something. So when the relationship between this premier and our chiefs collapsed into open war, I didn't just read the headlines. I went back to the record, to Hansard, to her own words spoken on the floor of the legislature while I was working down the hall. Reader, the receipts are devastating, not because she was wrong then, because she was right then. And she knows it. Exhibit A. She demanded consultation, then she refused to give it. May 9, 2013, the PC government tables Bill 22, the Aboriginal Consultation Levy Act. Danielle Smith rises in the House and listen to her. Quote, I find it quite troubling that in a bill which is called the Aboriginal Consultation Levy Act, there has been virtually no meaningful consultation with any of the First Nations. She read Treaty 6 and Treaty 8's objections into the record. She moved to send the bill to committee so chiefs could actually be heard. She pledged to spend her summer visiting 15 to 20 First Nations across Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territory. Fast forward to now. Two Alberta courts, December 2025, and again this past May, have found that our government's separation referendum push tramples treaty rights, and that Alberta breached its constitutional duty to consult First Nations. Her response? She called the ruling, quote, anti-democratic, appealed it, and put the question on the October ballot anyway. Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation Chief Sheldon Sunshine, lead plaintiff in the case, told me the province hasn't contacted him since the ruling. Not a call, not a meeting. Letters to her office vanish into a void. The woman who once stood in the House demanding the government talk to First Nations now won't return their mail. Exhibit B. She predicted this exact crisis. Then she caused it. In the same 2013 speech, Danielle warned what happens when a government bulldozes First Nations. She invoked Idle No More and reminded the House what it looks like when our people shut down a highway because nobody would listen. She read the chief's warning of coordinated and forceful opposition and told the government to bring the temperature down before it was too late. She understood better than the PC minister she was lecturing that blockades are not the disease, they are the symptom of a government that stopped listening. Now, treaty chiefs are telling her the same thing she once told Alison Redford's government. Stop, consult, or we will stand on the highways and stop you ourselves. And Danielle's answer? She pointed at the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act, the law built in 2020 to crush Indigenous land defenders, and said it would be enforced. Up to 6 months in jail. She is prepared to arrest chiefs. She wrote the prophecy in 2013. In 2026, she cast herself as the villain in it. Exhibit C. She preached Section 35. Now she treats it like an obstacle. Critic Danielle told the legislature that Crown, quote, cannot act unilaterally, that Aboriginal and treaty rights are protected by Section 35 of the Constitution, and she pointedly noted they carry stronger protection than property rights. She warned that legislation built without First Nations consent invites constitutional challenge and tears relationships that take, quote, years and years and years to repair. She invoked the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples on the floor and on the record. Premier Danielle is attempting the most unilateral act available to a provincial government, carving an international border through Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territory. Treaties signed with the Crown decades before Alberta existed. Treaties no premier, no petition, no referendum has the authority to dissolve. She knew that in 2013. She explained it to the House herself. And that makes what she did at the Western Premier's Conference just a few weeks ago all the more abhorrent. Because she knows better. She knows Premier Canoe is right. She knows it. Because in 2013, she too was talking about Section 35 in a manner similar to which Mr. Canoe is talking about it today. Exhibit D, Trust and Friendship. This is the one that gets me. In that 2013 debate, Danielle explained why she'd made herself Aboriginal relations critic. She praised Ralph Klein's approach. She said the relationship with First Nations has to begin with trust and friendship, that if you start by foisting your agenda on First Nations, quote, you're going to end up tearing the relationship. Today, chiefs calling her a traitor. The Blackfoot Confederacy issuing safety warnings to its own members because of the racism the separatist movement she's riding has uncorked. Treaty 8 Grand Chief Mecredy calling her government lawless. The Assembly of First Nations National Chief taking this fight to King Charles himself because the treaty partner who'll actually listen apparently lives at Buckingham Palace now. That is the relationship Danielle Smith built, the one she warned everyone about. What I can't tell you and what I'm asking. Full transparency, I helped arrange Danielle's visit to First Nations communities back then, but 12 years on, I don't recall which communities she ultimately visited or how many, or whether she even completed the tour of 15 to 20 nations she promised on the floor of the legislature. So I'm asking if you're a chief, a counselor, a band staffer, or former Wild Rose worker who hosted or organized one of Danielle Smith's community visits in 2014, I want to hear from you. What did she say in your community? What did she promise? My inbox is open. Let's finish this record together. Fork-tongued or just afraid? First Nations leaders have called her fork-tongued, speaking with two tongues, one for the cameras in our communities, one for the boardrooms in Calgary. After everything I've laid out, You could close the case right here. As we've said on the show, she speaks out of both sides of her two faces. But I knew her, and I keep coming back to that hallway. I don't believe the tears were fake. I watched her be genuinely moved by Theodore Fontaine's story, by my Cookum's history, bleeding through the words on her page. The humanity was real. I saw it. And if you watch the clip, you could see that the two people sitting behind her also wiped away tears at some point. What I also saw was what she did with it. She treated her own compassion like a security breach. The crying wasn't a moment of connection to her, it was a vulnerability to be patched. And I think that's the truest answer to what went wrong. She was never forced to choose between caring and power until the stakes got high enough. Now the separatist base she's riding demands that she treat First Nations as obstacles, and the armor she's worn since that day in the chamber makes the choice easy. Was it always optics? Maybe. Or maybe it was a woman at war with her own conscience and the conscience lost. Either way, the chiefs facing arrest don't have the luxury of caring which one it is. One last thing. In 2012, the same spring she took the Indigenous file, Danielle stood in the legislature and claimed Cherokee ancestry. A great-great-grandmother, she said, survived the Trail of Tears. When APTN dug into the records in 2022 working with Cherokee genealogists, they found nothing to support it. I'm not here to litigate her family tree. I'm here to point out the shape of the things. She claimed kinship with us when it opened doors, and she abandoned obligation to us when it closed deals. Kinship is not a costume. In our ways, to claim relations is to accept responsibility to them, all of them, forever. So Danielle, from your old speechwriter, from the woman who stood beside you among the survivors and believed you, you told the legislature in 2013 that a torn relationship with First Nations takes years and years and years to repair. You were right. Look at the years ahead of you. You once dreamed out loud to me about real relationships with Indigenous people. Where did she go, that woman? Because the one threatening the jail chiefs for defending the treaties you yourself once explained to a government that wouldn't listen, she is building a legacy, all right. It just isn't the one you cried for. The chiefs are still standing where you left them. The trust you talked about is still possible the way it has always been possible, by showing up, by listening, by honoring the treaty before the agenda. You were there the day something sacred happened, truth, healing. You felt it. I watched you feel it. Remember where you come from. Remember who you said you wanted to be. Whew. Wow. Wow. And the exact date of that speech was May 9th, 2013. 28th Legislature, first session. Brandy Morin, I tell you, kits and cubs, she can wield a pen. She can wield a pen. I am going to include the link to this in the chat. That way you can read it for yourselves again on your own time, and maybe even subscribe. Bridge that gap that she talked about in the opening. I see we have a new kit here that I haven't seen before. Kit DJ Oaks Monroe. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. Pull up a log. Stay a while. Hopefully you will find something that you like here. The DamFam is a really amazing group of people, so I know that you will be very warmly welcomed. All right, kids and cubs. Whew. Moving to our next subject today. Something that we didn't have planned on the agenda originally, but it seems to be pretty important. And that is the Prime Minister, who had given an interview to CNN with Caitlin Collins from CNN about the Iran deal, because it would seem that the Prime Minister, see, this is something that's really interesting between the relationship between Donald Trump and the Prime Minister of Canada, as much as Donald Trump keeps on trolling us and insulting us, there are also moments where we learn that there's probably some type of serious respect there, because it would appear that the Prime Minister was one of the only people to see the text of the agreement before it is made public. I don't even know if it is completely made public yet, because I believe that there were supposed to be official signatures on Friday in Switzerland from what I last heard. But it seems that the Prime Minister did get to see it, that Donald Trump did show it to him. Not the type of thing I think he would do if the situation was that antagonistic. Interesting. So he granted an interview to CNN's Caitlin Collins, and there is manner that it was manner in which it was reported more broadly that seemed to indicate that he is claiming that this is it's a good deal. That is somewhat questionable whether or not it actually is even a deal, really. Is questionable. However, we are also in a situation, globally speaking, where everybody is trying to work around Donald Trump, who is making everybody's lives miserable and more difficult than it needs to be. And perhaps there is some strategic blowing of sunshine up a backside going on here. Kid Lindam says, the first thing I thought was Trump called Carney to get his opinion because he knows that Carney is the smartest man in any room. Possibly. Trump also loves celebrity, and particularly he likes bankers. So, you know. And his reputation is so bad right now that a little good reputation by association certainly couldn't hurt him at the moment. There was an interesting moment at the meeting where Donald Trump wasn't happy with the chair that he had. He had a low chair, and he couldn't figure out how to raise it. And of course, because everything about Donald Trump is image, well, I can't be sitting in a chair that's lower than everyone, people getting a picture of that. How would that look? Well, let's take a look at what happened in that particular instance.
I got to go around. I'm down on the ground. It's too late. They got it. Did you get it up?
Oh, you used the chair?
How about the general's chair? He had it right.
Yeah, his is fire.
Then you look at yourself in a picture and you say, what happened? What happened? I had the lowest chair in the whole room. You know what? This is the UN. Oh, is that it? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Remember, that's funny. Oh, that's much better. It's so funny.
Oh, that's much better.
So yeah. Did you see that? Did you see first how he slammed down on the table to get someone's attention because he wasn't getting enough attention. Worried about how it would look. The Prime Minister of Canada swapped chairs. Prime Minister of Canada, who is shorter than Donald Trump, swapped chairs. Prime Minister of Canada doesn't care what he looks like if he sits in a low chair. Now, Donald Trump probably won't remember this 15 minutes later. That once again, the Prime Minister of Canada came to his rescue. But right there, Kit Linda, that was getting the toddler to shut up so the adults can get some work done. Kit Elaine, so you're saying Donald Trump had problems getting it up? Oh, Kit Elaine, petty is a beautiful color on you too. Dang. And Kit Saucy, that table is very vaginal. Isn't it though? Oh my God. Wow. So yeah. Sorry, I have something stuck in my throat and I've been taking some Beaver moistener and it is not getting rid of it. So I'm sorry if I'm a little gravelly here and clearing my throat a little. It's a pretty annoying sound when the mic is picking it up. I'm quite aware. But I've been trying to clear my throat during the clips and it's not happening. So I'm doing my best and I thank you for your patience on that. So the Prime Minister got to see the terms of the deal a little earlier than everybody else, even than probably a lot of people in the United States who probably would really have a good reason to want to see it. So let's take a look at this interview granted to CNN's Caitlin Collins and see if we might be able to get a few insights into what the Prime Minister was really intending here. Because if you remember, the Prime Minister is someone that is very good with words. If you remember his use particularly of transformational in the first meeting, there is some word use that could be interpreted in that way in this interview as well. Just going to make sure that we're all set up here. Yes, we are. Okay, here we go. Let's give you some volume as well.
Congressional lawmakers are anxiously awaiting to see the president's agreement with Iran. There is at least one world leader who has seen it. It's not the Israelis, whose apparent request to see this was rejected, according to our colleagues reporting. But instead, it is the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who I spoke with earlier today on the sidelines of the G7 summit. So,
congressional leaders haven't seen it, and the leader of Israel has not even seen it. But Mark Carney had. And that should tell you something.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for being here. You said coming into the summit, Iran was the #1 topic for the world leaders here to discuss. What is your assessment of this preliminary agreement between Iran and the U.S.?
Well, I came in with that as the #1 topic. I have to say it's exceeded my expectations. We're very pleased with the deal that's been struck. It sets the groundwork to ensure Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. It sets the groundwork for a reintegration over time of the economies in the region. It sets the groundwork for a solution in Lebanon, which we discussed today. So it's positive. Of course, it has to be followed through. It has to be implemented. And I think one of the things is the president helped create that deal, led creating that deal. The rest of the G7 and the broader community needs to help implement it.
Did you actually see the agreement itself?
I've seen the agreement, yes.
Oh, so the president showed it to you?
Well, I've seen the agreement. We have our sources, just like you.
Okay. Well, we haven't seen it publicly. It hasn't been released. Is it true it's about a page and a half?
It is a reasonable length for an agreement which is in effect, it is a cessation of hostilities. It's a ceasefire for that 60-day period, as you know. But it sets out a series of conditions and what will happen when they are fulfilled. So I think it's well structured from our perspective. But I think as well is the regional countries are behind it. Of course, we met with the UAE, with the Qataris, the Egyptians. We have contacts as well, and again, it's well structured. It creates, I actually think, I think it's a game changer, not just for this situation, because it starts to take off certainly this issue, but it allows us, and this is what's happened in the meeting, to step back, look anew at Ukraine.
Yeah.
Ukraine situation. We had a very, very constructive conversation around Ukraine.
I want to ask you about Ukraine,
but I'll let you
but on this MOU itself, because the administration has not released the text of it, is there anything surprising in it?
Anything surprising? Look, I think we all went through weeks and weeks where it seemed close to having a deal, but there wasn't a deal. So is the surprise that there's actually a deal? Maybe you could put it that way, but having the deal and then getting behind it, that's what's crucial. And you heard everyone in that room last night through to today getting behind it and the possibilities that are created by it.
Well, and the president says he thinks this next 60-day period will actually be easier to negotiate than getting to this preliminary agreement. But of course, this period is going to deal with the big stuff. I mean, nuclear being the number one issue, the enriched uranium. Do you think it's going to be easier?
All right. So just stop in here for a second here. Game changer. Well, if we are having a cessation of hostilities, at least for 16 days, that does change the game. Is it a game changer in that it revolutionizes how things are going down? Well, I mean, not really, right? I mean, if the Strait of Hormuz is going to be reopened, well, it was open before the war started. So it's not particularly a gain or a win for the United States, really. Now, is it all the discussions about what's going to happen to the nuclear program are explicitly not part of this agreement? They're going to be discussed now. And the Prime Minister keeps on talking, and so does Donald Trump, about, Iran must not be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. But again and again and again, U.S. intel and the International Atomic Energy Agency have all been saying for quite a long time that Iran was not actively pursuing a nuclear weapon before any of this. According to Bell of the Ranch, it doesn't matter how many times he drags out the WMD line in his speeches, the assessments say otherwise. And throughout this entire war, Iran has learned that maybe it doesn't even need a nuclear weapon now, because it has had a chance to test out its hypothesis that it could inflict more damage by shutting down the Strait of Hormuz. And it would seem that perhaps this agreement leads to a situation where Iran now knows that it has that ability that it could exercise at whim, and who really is going to stop them. Which ironically leaves Iran stronger than they were before Trump started all of this in the first place. According to Bell of the Ranch, they have successfully tied their national security to international security by maintaining the capability to disrupt the global economy. Let's go back to what the Prime Minister is saying here. I'm going to put it back to the question that was asked before. We might hear the Prime Minister speak a little bit before the question comes back. But there we go.
Well, and the president says he thinks this next 60-day period will actually be easier to negotiate than getting to this preliminary agreement. But of course, this period is going to deal with the big stuff. I mean, nuclear being the number one issue, the enriched uranium. Do you think it's going to be easier?
I think the way it's structured, it says what has to happen. So, for example, Iran will not develop or procure a nuclear weapon. And then there's follow-on implications of that for what to do with the uranium. So in that regard, the Rubicon, if I can use that metaphor, has been crossed. And when we went into this situation, the world went into this situation, the big risk, the big destabilizing force was Iran. It's been that way for decades, and the core issue was them never being able to have a nuclear weapon. That's at the heart of the deal. So it becomes, what's the timeline for dealing with the enriched uranium? How much is blended? How much is surrendered? And worked out from there. But agreeing to the core, I think is critical.
And what does it say about sanctions relief and unfreezing their assets, which they definitely want?
Well, they definitely want that, and they definitely want financing more broadly. And there is language, and it's not my agreement, so I should let others really go into all the detail. But I think what is crucial as well is it's performance-based. I mean, you have a big financial incentive.
Yeah, how do you measure the performance-based? I mean, we keep hearing that, but how do they?
Well,
how does the U.S. intend to measure that?
Part of it is, well, what happens first and foremost, what's happening in the Strait? Is shipping unimpeded in the Strait? Are the mines all being cleared? Are the Iranians helping with clearing the mines? Will help, and others will help with clearing the mines. But what's actually happening day to day, hour by hour in the Strait, and the flow of oil and others. So that's one, LNG. Secondly, the progress on the next phase of the negotiation. So what is going to happen with the uranium and what's structured around that. So you look at that, and then you set up a series of milestones. I mean, this is why you have negotiators and mediators and guarantors in peace agreements. And so you set up milestones and then connect those to some of the financial and sanctions relief.
Okay, so you're on board with this agreement as it is right now, from what you've seen?
Yes, absolutely. And and I can say this unequivocally, as is everyone else who's been in that room.
And Canada plans to help with opening the Strait of Hormuz.
We will help as we can. I mean, we're not a big regional naval power. We have some assets that we can help with this. We can do some stuff on monitoring, but importantly, we can do things on the financial side, overseeing on the financial side, because remember, there are assets that are being unfrozen. There's a process by which and so we can help on that. The other thing, Caitlin, if I may, we also, collectively, we have to take the lessons of this. And one of the big lessons here is that, don't be held hostage to one choke point in the global economy, whether that's for oil, whether that's for gas, whether it's for critical minerals, whether it's for a large language model, cyber capability, all things we're discussing here. So what's Canada's role? In some of these cases, we can really help in lessening that.
When you look at this war in hindsight, because obviously it's been a key question for almost every world leader here that has had to deal with the ramifications, the president lashed out at pretty much everyone who's here for not helping out more at the beginning of this war.
Pretty much everyone in this interview.
Yeah, that's true. And in terms of when you look back at this, do you believe this war was worth it in Canada's view?
I think that, the number one risk, I answered this question 3 years ago or so at Davos, and I was asked, what's the number one risk in the global economy? And I said Iran. And it was at a time when people were not focused on Iran, because I've always believed that it's the biggest exporter of terror. It was hell-bent, sorry if I can say that, on getting a nuclear weapon, and the force multiplier on that, of course, was terrible. And so going and getting to a position where Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon, look, I'm not naive about this. The reintegration of Iran, this is a regime that needs to learn to be civilized, needs to behave. That's why you have performance measures. Lots needs to happen. We all have to support it. But moving to this position where that's been taken off the table, yes, that's worth it.
You mentioned President Zelensky. You met with him today. He's also been...
Okay, so want to put that in context because it's been reported that the Prime Minister said that the war was worth it. This longer answer seems to indicate more that moving to this position where that has been taken off the table is worth it. Not necessarily the war. Now, if one wanted to be generous, one could say that because if we believe the IAEA, and we believe U.S. Intel, that has stated over and over and over and over again that there is absolutely no evidence that Iran had ever been pursuing a nuclear weapon, at least in recent times. Iran has always maintained that their goal was to provide energy But however, enriching uranium up to 60% definitely had a lot of people concerned. Maybe that was maybe that was the level of deterrence the regime was willing to go to. But the strikes against Iran, if Iran ever was not pursuing a nuclear weapon and ever needed a catalyst, to use a word that the Prime Minister likes, to decide, you know what, maybe we should indeed pursue that weapon, it would be what the United States was doing. So now that we have this ceasefire, and it appears that Donald Trump is really, really willing to take a big loss, because compared to what he said his goals were at the start of all this and what he's getting now, he's achieved none of his goals. There's been no regime change. There has been no total and complete surrender of Iran. There has been no situation for the people to go out and take control of their government, as he claimed at the beginning. Once we're done all of this, go out and take control of your government, Iranians. We will have done the hard work for you. Right? And in the process, the United States hasn't exactly helped itself defense-wise, because in the early days, they went through munitions at such a rate that on June 11th, Donald Trump had to issue a memo to invoke the Defense Production Act of 1950 to shore up the supplies of munitions. Basically, the United States depleted some of its ability to even defend itself at home in the pursuit of this. There is absolutely no way in which the United States is better off after all of this than before. Maybe that's what was worth it, at least in Canada's view. Because it sure makes things different for us in the CUSMA negotiations, isn't it? If the United States' stocks are so depleted that they need to invoke the Defense Production Act, if their reserves of oil are so low that it's going to take years and years of oil companies pumping out product and able to, in order to fill those reserves in, and the United States being in a desperate situation, needing to refill them, being willing to pay whatever it is that is needed to replenish those reserves. That theory or hypothesis of Donald Trump that once the war's over, the price of oil will drop like a stone. No. I mean, it may have dropped from $114 or $112 to $80, but it's not going back down to $60 anytime soon. If you think that the oil companies, when they know that the United States needs to replenish its strategic reserve, there's no reason for them to make it less expensive for them to do that. Now, is there? There is absolutely no way that the United States is better off at the end of this. All right, let's go on to what the Prime Minister has to say about what's going on with Ukraine, because it seems, at least according to the G7 leaders, that there may have been a bit of a breakthrough with Donald Trump on this front.
In these meetings behind closed doors with President Trump, you said you think that Ukraine is going to ultimately win this war.
Yeah.
When you were talking behind closed doors and the U.S. president was there, is that a view that he seemed to share as well?
I think it's a view that is held strongly by those who are very active. Canada's the biggest per capita supplier of aid to Ukraine. We're one of the biggest trainers of the Ukraine army. We have joint production agreements with Ukraine. We're on the front lines in the Baltics. So we are in and around. We, the Germans, the UK, the French, all are of the view that the tide has turned in this war. It is a matter of time. Putin is going to lose this war, and from now until the point where he realizes that or accepts that, it is absolutely senseless slaughter.
All right. Absolutely.
What's going on?
Senseless. We got a little bit of a moment of Tyler Bucket there. Popping in. So yeah, what was it exactly that is worth it? Was it the war? Was it the fact that this whole senseless stuff has stopped? Again, kind of hard to clearly define, but it doesn't seem to be as simple as saying this war was worth it. Not sure how much this is going to help us in one way with CUSMA, because Donald Trump is pretty much all over the place, and basically saying again on Wednesday that he would rather not have a Canada-US-Mexico agreement in place, but as Donald Trump does, says everything and its opposite at the same time. Quote, "We would do better without the agreement, but I may sign it anyway. I would rather not have the agreement, but I may sign it." Oh, well. Right? Like nailing Jello to a wall, this man is. With regard to Ukraine, Prime Minister talking about his belief that there's no way that Russia or Putin could win this war at the moment, and that, as he mentioned, everything else that is going to happen as a result is essentially senseless slaughter. But eventually, it takes two parties, in this case, to stop a war. So, not sure what's going to come out of that yet. On that front, the Prime Minister did have a moment to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky at the summit. And said that Prime Minister Carney strongly condemned Russia's latest attack on Kyiv, including the strike on the Kyiv Perchesk Lavra Monastery, a sacred site in Ukraine and Eastern Christianity. He also commended President Zelensky for his continued efforts to secure a just and lasting peace for the people of Ukraine, including through direct negotiations. The leaders discussed the situation on the ground, including Ukraine's remarkable battlefield victories and resilience. The Prime Minister reaffirmed Canada's continued commitment to supporting Ukraine and maintaining pressure on Russia. This year alone, Canada has provided $2.8 billion in military assistance to Ukraine and renewed Operation Unifier, enabling the Canadian Armed Forces to continue training Ukrainian soldiers. Since 2014, we have also imposed sanctions on over 3,400 individuals and entities, as well as over 600 vessels to hold Russia accountable. To increase pressure on Russia to negotiate and to support Ukraine at this critical time in the war, the Prime Minister announced that Canada is imposing new sanctions targeting Russia's shadow fleet, energy revenues, defense industrial, and disinformation actors. This package will target a total of 162 individuals, entities, and vessels, all assets of the Russian war machine. The Prime Minister also underscored Canada's efforts to establish the Defense Security and Resilience Bank to provide multi-year low-cost financing for defense, security, and resilience initiatives. The Prime Minister underlined Canada's support for Ukraine's reconstruction, including opportunities to leverage Canadian expertise in energy, infrastructure, and clean tech, and noted the importance of continued efforts to noted the importance of continued reform to bolster Ukraine's resilience. And the leaders discussed strengthening defense industrial partnerships between the two countries, including advanced technologies such as drone production. Canada and Ukraine will harness our expertise and unique strengths to further connect our defense industries and create more jobs. According to Jordan Gowling in The National Pest. Sorry, I couldn't resist on that one. um, let's see if we can get this story up for us. Having a little difficulty here. There we go. Hopefully that will work. Nope. Nothing cooperating on that. So I'm going to have to move on to something else here. Pardon me while I look for something else. Let's go with Canadian Press News. Nope, nothing specifically on that there. All right. It seems that the leaders, I'm looking for a joint statement because there isn't one joint communique, as we mentioned the other day, that there are various statements on smaller things. And I'm just trying to see if there's a joint one on what was going on with Ukraine, because obviously that is a big issue here at the summit. But I'm not seeing one other than some things in the press that are stating that the G7 is behind everything with Ukraine, and even that Donald Trump seems to have made a move recognizing that Putin is not particularly interested in peace. There we go. From New Voice of Ukraine. This is what I was looking for. This is Alex Stezhensky. U.S. President Donald Trump has shifted his position on the war in Ukraine toward one other. Well, that doesn't make. Oh, okay. U.S. President Donald Trump has shifted his position on the war in Ukraine towards one other G7 leaders see as more realistic. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney told reporters on June 17th. Carney said he had 7 or 8 conversations with Trump over the past 36 hours on the sidelines of the G7 summit discussing Ukraine, Lebanon, and Iran. Quote, "We discussed the issues involving Ukraine, Lebanon, and the change in tone on Ukraine, the change in course. There is a more realistic, in our view, understanding of how this war will develop, and also the position on supporting Ukraine, which was discussed in considerable detail," Carney said. Politico reported on June 16th that Trump could make concessions on Ukraine in exchange for Europe's help with the Strait of Hormuz. Trump also surprised G7 participants after a 70-minute meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky and other leaders by announcing that the United States would reimpose sanctions on Russia's oil sector. Moscow must agree to a peace deal, Trump said. So this might be another reason that Mark Carney might be saying that what has happened in Iran is worth it, because perhaps it put Donald Trump in a situation where, hey, if you want our help in, for example, demining the Strait of Hormuz, then you need to help us in Ukraine. And given that Donald Trump doesn't have many options, I mean, bond yields were getting particularly high, and they have, if there's one thing that is dropped like a stone, it is the U.S. 10-year bond yield. Since news of this has come about, I will show this to you here, kits and cubs, because if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I was stating that they were getting close to the danger zone. This has changed rather precipitously here. This is the 10-year bond yield in the United States, and at its peak, right over here on May 19th, it came in at 4.660. It is now down to 4.432. And The 10-year bond yield is the type of things that help determine what your mortgage rates are going to be, credit card interest rates, those types of things, your lines of credit. The 30-year, which is much more important for the United States' staggering national debt, on May 19th had hit a high of 5.18%. And that 5% mark is a psychological lever, and people were worried about getting it to 5.5, which would definitely be across the danger zone. And we're down now to 4.8730. And this has had similar impacts on the Canadian 10-year bond yield and 30-year bond yields as well, because the United States sometimes is the rising tide that pulls up boats when that happens. And in Canada on May 19th, our 10-year got up to a high of 3.7440, and now we're at 3.371. So the drop in our bond yield has been more dramatic than the one in the United States. And that is good news for people who might be renewing mortgages because, again, that 10-year rate is something that is particularly important. And in Canada, our 30-year bond yield rate also on May 19th hit maximum a high of 4.0860 and is now sitting at 3.765. So some relief, and with our borrowing costs as well and all that kind of stuff, that will definitely reduce some of our charges that we incur to service our debt, which is a good thing because the bonus that we were getting from the high price of oil is now dissipating. And in fact, the price of oil is still decreasing because when I mentioned it a few days ago, crude oil was around $80 and Brent was around 83. And today crude oil is at $73.62 and Brent's at $76.73. So we're looking at a monthly decline of 29% and near 31% respectively for crude oil and Brent oil, which eventually, hopefully, will make it down to consumers. But that might not happen right away because, as we mentioned on the show, sometimes the prices of these types of things shoot up like a rocket and come down like a feather. And Peter Armstrong, who is the business specialist from CBC, has a pretty decent explanation of how it is that why it is that the price will not come down as quickly as people would like. And I'm going to show that to you here at the moment because he has a very good knack for explaining things in simple terms. So for those of us who are not particularly experts on all the vagaries of the oil market, can actually understand a little bit what it is that is the situation. I'm trying to see if I can get this full screen. It does not seem that that's an option, so I apologize for that. Here we go.
And start seeing oil flow out of the Persian Gulf again. You got to fix all the damage to the energy infrastructure, and you got to deal with all these ships. They've been sitting there for months now, building up barnacles. They're going to have to go through maintenance. They're going to have to go through hull repair. And even then, getting ships out, that's only half the problem. So energy markets are celebrating this. We saw the price of oil fall, but it hasn't fallen anywhere close to where it was before the war began. And that's because we haven't dealt with the underlying problem. Until we see how energy markets are going to fill this billion-barrel hole that's been built up in global energy markets since the beginning of the war, the price of oil is going to remain higher, certainly higher than it was in February. There's been vast damage to energy markets, but there's been vast damage done to actual local economies as well. Pakistan uses LNG out of Qatar. That hasn't been able to flow since the Strait of Hormuz closed at the end of February. Repairing all of that damage is what's going to have to happen now. And that's going to take time, it's going to take money, and it's going to take political will to get it done and keep the deal that's ended this war from falling apart. So even if the strait opens, and even if ships start being able to move in and out of there again, and even if all the production that's come offline as a result of the attacks during the war, even if all that happens, you still got to address the fact that it takes weeks for these tankers to move around the world and get to their global destinations. Shipping tankers move at about the same speed as a bicycle. So all that's going to take time, and that will only start to heal the problem. The CEO of Shell has said he thinks it's going to take a year before we get back to anything approaching an equilibrium in energy markets. It's not like...
So there you go, kits and cubs. Very easy to understand explanation from Peter Armstrong about all the other things that are going to ensure that the price of oil does not come down to where it was before all of this started as quickly. But still, a drop from $112 a barrel to about $73 a barrel is rather significant. So hopefully there will start to be some relief of some kind somewhere along the way, and that will positively impact inflation numbers, and showing that the governor of the Bank of Canada may have been wise to not overreact one way or the other right now, and to wait to see, or at the time I should say, and to wait to see how things were going to play out, particularly when we started getting word that somewhere around the 35th or 36th time that Donald Trump promised that he was very, very close to a deal and that Iran wanted one really, really badly, started to be being confirmed by the other side that was being negotiated with through the intermediaries in Pakistan who are negotiating, and all the other nations that were helping on the side to try to bring that through. All right, kits and cubs, I had hoped to talk about a lot more today, but those first two subjects took up the entire time. I should probably finish that article from the New Voice of Ukraine, however, before I sign off for today. It says here that the G7 Leader Summit opened on June 15th in the French resort city of Évian-les-Bains under Emmanuel Macron's chairmanship and is scheduled to run through June 17th. Zelensky and Trump held closed-door talks on June 16th. Trump called the first meeting in several months very good. Zelensky later said he hoped to meet with Trump again on June 17th. So that's basically what we have, but apparently, at least for now, because that can change on a dime at any moment, seeming that Donald Trump is kind of accepting that under Putin, there is no avenue for peace. And that, again, as the midterms are coming, and he wants to take some of these things that are basically a ball and chain around his ankle and dragging them down, wants to take them off the table. That, well, like I said, might have a little more incentive to get things done. We have this agreement with Iran, allegedly, that is going to lead to more talks with regard to anything nuclear, and Donald Trump's position on that keeps on changing, where he seems to be willing to accept less and less and less and still call it a win, because that's the only thing that matters to him, really, is to be able to go back to the United States and saying, hey, I ended a war, and ain't I great? Right? Pump his own tires here, even though the United States is going to be in an objectively worse situation than it was before it entered that. And maybe if he can take some steps that could, now that it looks like, because Donald Trump always likes to back a winner, now that it looks like Putin is indeed going to lose, that also might create incentive for Donald Trump to say, see, I was always on Ukraine's side afterwards, because again, He likes to be on the winning side. And maybe with all of this, again, I'd rather not have CUSMA. The good thing about CUSMA is that it wasn't NAFTA and that it had created a situation where I can get out of it. So I would prefer to get out of it, but I might sign it. Yeah, you probably are going to sign it because there's nobody else in the United States that wants out of it. And you certainly don't want to go into midterms with the entire business community telling everybody in the United States what a dimbulb you are for having created more uncertainty with regard to that agreement. So who knows? Things might be looking up. Again, like I said, we need to microdose on hope right now these days. So. And there are a couple of things emerging from this G7 meeting about which to be a little bit hopeful. You're definitely going to have a chorus of G6 leaders and pretty much everybody else that was there encouraging the United States to follow down these paths because, well, said the United States wasn't the only nation that had their access to energy and there's some of the reserves starting to deplete. Let's just put it that way. So I'm sure there was no lack of international pressure on Donald Trump to get to some type of agreement, even if it's nobody except for a select few people have seen it yet. And a lot of the terms are still very vague and undefined. And some of the big things, like I said, the things around nuclear are far, far, far from decided yet, and still could be many areas where these things will trip up. Yeah, Donald Trump saying again, well, we got 60 days, and if we can't get it to it, we'll just bomb again. But I'm not sure what that's going to do because at this point, so much has been bombed. As Bella of the Ranch says, the only thing that you're doing by putting more bombs is just making some rubble bounce. And it's not like you've got the munitions. Which, also helps us because a lot of aluminium is needed and steel for those for that defense capability that's been depleted. And it turns out we have it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with these CUSMA talks. Remember that everything that we're going to be hearing from the United States, particularly all the negative stuff, is for domestic consumption first. For him to create the illusion that he's some type of master negotiator that's getting this fantastic deal. Especially, again, as the midterms are coming along, and he needs a little good rest. So we take everything with not a grain of salt, but a full salt lick. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We had so much more that we could have talked about today. I probably could do a second show today, but given that we are going to have the interview with Tyler Watt, I am going to set aside the second show because technically that will be it. So join us around 2:30 this afternoon. For that, that's the time that I was given on the schedule. Maybe a couple of minutes later, depending on Mr. Watts' schedule, because again, politicians' most valuable asset is their time, and sometimes they are running quickly from place to place. But hopefully we will have them at 2:30, close to or exactly, and we can get on with it. If you do have some questions that you would like me to ask Tyler, please send them to truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. I will also be putting an advance link up as soon as I finish the show. I'm going to be creating a link for it and putting it up. So if you have some questions and you just want to put them in the chat there before the show starts, they'll be there and I'll be able to find them, take note of them, and ask them of them. And you don't have to be from Ontario. right? If you want me to take your question, if you live out in British Columbia, if you live out in Newfoundland, if you live up north, and you are wondering what the heck's going on with Doug Ford, and you got a couple of questions, bring them in. It's not just for the Ontarians. It's not even just for the Canadians, because we have some viewers from several countries around the world. And if you want to know what's going on, if you have a question, please put it to us, and we'll try to work it into the interview as we can. All right. Please, please, please share the content. Help us with the algorithm in that manner. It really means a lot to us, especially when you include a word saying what it is that our content resonates with you, because that makes it more likely that people are going to click on it because they trust you, and if they look at you as a person of influence in their circle. But other ways you can help us, Kids and Cubs, is by scanning this QR code, which will bring you to our YouTube page, where you can get freaky with our buttons and smash with them. Like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little click, because we love it when you do. It helps us with the algorithm as well. And if you are watching this show fewer than 7 days after it is broadcast, and you are watching it on your phone or your tablet, if you go to the comment section and swipe left, you can grant us some hype points, which allows smaller audience channels like our own gain a little bit more visibility and popularity. And we definitely appreciate that. And of course, our podcasts are now back up. We are running a couple of days later because we were able to grab the audio off our shows from up to 7 days back. So we started there to try to get as much content as we could on. But hopefully we will, the production of the shows on YouTube and their listing on our podcast will start to match relatively soon, within the space of a week. Yesterday we put up 2 shows, and we're trying to do that, maybe put 2 or 3 shows up a day. Not too many to overwhelm people, but to get us back to speed with where we are. And hopefully the weekends will allow us to put a couple of extra there to get us back up to speed, so that everybody's on the same schedule again, which would be really nice. And then we'll be working on those for our podcast listeners, because we hadn't had anything since end of September. Maybe, like I said, the lost episodes or something, or from the vault or something, that we'll put up and try to get the old ones up on as well, to make sure that at least our entire catalog is available on our podcast feeds, which it is currently not. And between September and now, that's a lot of work we have to do to get those up to speed. So that's going to be a long-term project. Other ways you can help us, Kids and Cubs, if you like what we do, and you would like to encourage us to do more and offer us a little financial support, you can go to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund, available at our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. You scan this QR code, it will bring you right there. You can make a one-time donation or a multi-month recurring donation. You can set it up for as long as you want. You are not locked in, and you can stop at any time. But obviously, recurring donations offer us a little stability, so we definitely appreciate those. And we get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through our Beaver Lodge Hydration Fund. Now, if you want to donate via YouTube, we have memberships, we have stickers, and we have super chats. We get about 70% of your donation there. And if you want to avoid the US CE Tech Bros altogether, a direct bank transfer from your bank to ours using our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, ensures that we get 100% of your donation. So we get more beaver bang for your beaver buck. And that is also always a very good thing. I feel like Martha Stewart, and that's a good thing. As well, Kids and Cubs, let's see, because democracy is something. Oh, no, sorry. If you are not able to contribute financially, we still would love to have your contribution in word. And you can use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, in order to achieve that. Let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, or ugly. Send us some guest suggestions for the interview project. Send us some questions for Tyler Watt or for Dan. because we're going to have him on Tuesday. So send your questions there, or like I said, for Tyler, just post them in the link for the show that I will be posting afterwards, and I will try to get your questions to him. And as well, we have our socials, of course, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and on the Twitter, True North Eager Beaver Facebook, our original home. We have the DamFam Discord, so you can keep the conversation going when there isn't a show. We have the Instagram run by Kit Uncover, who produces a lot of our clips. Thank you so very much for that. And our Beaver Bites Substack, as well as our coffee page. So lots of ways to keep in touch. And of course, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, right down here in the comments section, leave us a little word. We try to read absolutely everything that you write, even though we're not able to necessarily answer everyone, and everything that you contribute financially or in word does go back to try to make the show better, because it's your show too. And hopefully you see that reflected in what we put out there, that you see a little bit of what it is that you like and what you request, as well as what it is that we curate for you. Because democracy is something that you do, we already showed you 2 of our petitions, so we'll show you the remaining one. House of Commons petition, ourcommons.ca, E7124, the link of which we are going to put in the chat right here for you. There you go, my lovelies. And with that one, that is a petition here. Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong one. That's the one to review the conduct of Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. I am looking for House of Commons petition E7395, or commons.ca petition E7395, which is the one that is calling upon the House of Commons to no longer fund Stornoway as residence for the leader of the official opposition. And that petition is now at the, let's see if there's an update, 12,009 signature mark. So no change. No, sorry, 12,021. It just updated. So a slight change from yesterday's show. Please give those, share them, and please sign them. And do remember that some of them are closing really soon. One of them is closing on the 20th of June, and the other one on the 25th, the first 2 that I shared today. So get your signatures in on that one. The one for Stornoway has a little bit more time to go. It goes till July 30th. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Not sure I got much wisdom for you today, other than once again, I'm going to say, take a breath, especially when you see news out there that seems to have headlines that are designed to make you go, what? What? The Prime Minister said that the Iran war was worth it? Really? What planet is he on? What? Danielle Smith said Indigenous people need to check themselves? What's going on there? Oh, that one does provoke a legitimate what. But still, we need to bring it down, because it seems like the Treaty 6, 7, and 8 chiefs, they've got this. They've got this, no matter how much Danielle Smith chooses to lose mastery of herself in public. They're the ones that seem to know what time it is on this one. So on this issue, in the chiefs, I trust. So just remember to take a breath and then go to the source material to see if there's anything between the headline and what is actually reported that might change the color and the texture of that headline, so that we all maintain relatively healthy cortisol levels. Kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, may I please have a little Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear you. Yes, yes, you have asked so nicely, and therefore, how can I resist? I live to serve. Here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo for all of you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. And a little news about some Canadians who make us proud. We are following Team Canada at the World Softball World Cup. And Canada is a perfect 3-0. As we mentioned yesterday, Canada scored 7 runs in the first inning on the way to a 7-1 win against Australia. I don't know if Canada decided to apply a mercy rule upon itself after that, and then followed it up this morning with a 3-0 shutout of Cuba to improve to 3-0 atop of their group at the women's at the World Baseball Softball Confederation, the WBSC World Cup 2026. There you go. Actually, I'm seeing here that the score against Cuba was not a 3-0 shutout. Sorry, it was a 7-0 shutout to go up 3-0 in the standings. That was my bad. So I'm glad I was able to correct that in real time. That's all I've got for you now. Amour et bisous. And we'll see you all very, very, very soon. Like at 2:30. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful day.